What I've come to know is conscious leadership for me is about showing up with awareness, and awareness of yourself, of others, and then of the system that you're a part of, and then leading from that wholeness. So it is partially from intellect, and it's partially from heart, and it's partially from spirit. It's all of it together, not leading for the outcomes. We can go after the outcomes, but leading for alignment with value. So this goes back to, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I think conscious leadership is a way to bring your whole self into the way you generate money.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. And we are definitely going to make an impact on that mission today because, as promised, we have one of our favorite conscious leaders in the entire world joining us today, Matt Zemon. He is a mentor of ours. He is a friend. He is definitely changing the way the game's being played via his mission to, and this is where I really want to describe his approach to this space in and around conscious leadership. He is definitely on a mission to be able to explore the intersection of psychedelics, science, and even spirituality, which I can't wait to dig in today. He also blends his academic rigor with his compassionate advocacy to promote safer, intentional, transformative psychedelic use in this world, when this world has not needed it more than ever, this form of development and training. He definitely is spreading that ripple effect and amplifying it as far and wide as he possibly can. He just stepped off the TedX stage, giving an incredibly popular talk in and around how psychedelics really are catalysts, not cures. And I can't wait to dig deeply into why his thesis is in and around that. Matt Zemon, it is an honor and a privilege to introduce you again to our crowd. This is his second time back. If you want to go digging into the archives to see his first riff on the show. Matt, welcome. It is so amazing to have you on this new format, my friend.
Susan, Tracey, it's so good to be here. I've been so looking forward to this conversation. I love this topic of conscious leadership. And someone years ago told me I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be the clearest. And that really stayed with me because clarity isn't about control. It's about presence. And presence, I think, is where kind of conscious leadership begins. And that ties into the work I do, and it ties into the work you do. And how can we be more present in our everyday life in every single thing we do? And sometimes that manifests in our business objectives, and sometimes it manifests in our family, and sometimes it manifests in our personal. But it's all about conscious leadership because we just have one life.
I love this start to our conversation today. I know you align with what I'm about to say, but I believe that consciousness is what's going to change the way this game is being played. Tracey said it best last week when she said, when we change the way we see ourselves or see our inner world, the world that we see changes. And I just think that is what we're so excited to explore with you, sir. So where I'd like to begin today is asking you, how would you define conscious leadership? What does that mean to you?
Okay, so for me, I think let me start with what it's not. Conscious leadership is not about having all the answers. It's not about managing from the top down. What I've come to know is conscious leadership for me is about showing up with awareness, and awareness of yourself, of others, and then of the system that you're a part of, and then leading from that wholeness. So it is partially from intellect, and it's partially from heart, and it's partially from spirit. It's all of it together, not leading for the outcomes. We can go after the outcomes, but leading for alignment with value. So this goes back to, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I think conscious leadership is a way to bring your whole self into the way you generate money.
And how are psychedelics a catalyst for us being able to show up as our whole selves, integrating the holistic, perspective, that big picture perspective of not only our inner world, but how we orient in the world and the world that we're orienting in as a system, as you've described.
Okay. Let me answer this two ways.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start with, okay. When we think about conscious leadership, at its core, I think it's spiritual work, not religious,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, because
Mm-hmm.
it at its core is asking, who am I serving? What am I amplifying?
Mm-hmm.
What am I willing to transform in myself to bring more with others? And again, it's the same questions. Can I be awake in this role, whether that role is for me, for my family, for my business, for my community? Um, Now, to directly answer your question, when we think about psychedelics, I have to go back to my programming of all these years of this is how the world is. This is what it is. I have to get what's mine. It's a competitive world. I have to work harder. All the things that I was taught growing up that leads to good education, degrees, titles, that kind of stuff. That's the programming.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, we are pruning our neural pathways as we're getting older. So we literally are getting stuck in our ways of so these repetitive thinking patterns, these ways of moving through the world are get ingrained. And it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to break out of those things. There's many, many ways to break out of them, but it's hard. It can be
Mm-hmm.
hard. So for me, when I use a psychedelic, and I actually prefer the word entheogen because when they're used in spiritual practice, it's just a different language. But when we use a psychedelic, what it does is it enables me to put those patterns and aside for just a little bit. And I can remember, so it's not really a learning, it's a remembrance. I can remember that I didn't always think about my job or my life or my wife or my kids or my education or my stories or my titles the way I've been thinking about them. There's another way to think about them. And there's another way to think about me. And with that, everybody has different insights and awakenings and awarenesses. Um, but what then I think is so special is we can then take those insights and awakenings and awarenesses and think about how do I want to apply that? Now that I remember there's other ways to think about the world, how do I want to apply that knowledge in how I move through the world? And for many of us, we spend a lot of time moving through the world in work,
Mm-hmm.
doing work, chopping wood and carrying water for our family. So
Mm-hmm.
how do I want to take that insight and move through the world? And I believe that once we remember that we've had it all along, that there's heaven on earth, that I am loved and I am worthy and I am enough and I don't need to do anything for that, then I can move through the world with a different sense of power, and a different sense of gratitude, and a different sense of community. And I think psychedelics are really, really helpful for opening people up to that possibility. And then
Mm-hmm.
with intention and with community, it's how do we turn those spiritual experiences, those awakening experiences into spiritual and awakened lives. And conscious leadership is just is a terminology for when that's applied, typically in the work environment.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little bit of a long-winded answer.
But we really need to adapt, like more than we probably ever have in our leadership at work, at home, in life. And so, right about now, I think, is when we want to start learning about how we open up our creative capacities through the portal of consciousness. We don't mind the long winds. We got time to go as long-winded as we want. And I definitely want to explore the depths of what is in your experiential well. And I feel like that is something that I want to remark on because this is what first, had me feeling the call towards curiosity in
Mm-hmm.
regards to these catalysts because I sit there using a modality like NLP for the
Mm-hmm.
last 20 years, which is all about how do we get penetrating into the unconscious part of our experience where all those programs and patterns are hanging out, right? And how to help my clients like really unpack the stories and understand the meaning embedded in all of that, right? But I think one of the things that I always was aware of was a limitation is that when my clients have trauma, which high achievers we talk about on this show are trauma informed, so they all got some aspect of that, big T or little t trauma, that sometimes they can be completely blocked from those memories and experiences of being held and feeling unconditional love and feeling connected, right? And safe. And so I think that is what I started to calibrate in my chair when my clients would come back from these jungles of Costa Rica or Peru or any of these beautiful places where some of these experiences go down. And I was like,
Mm.
what? It's like you just now you know, and now you like experientially understand, which is like the deepest form of knowing. Like now we could really work with that. We could really go places based on those resources that are acquired experientially through this modality.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I mean, I spent many, many years as an entrepreneur in the business world. And one of the commonalities of the people who I saw that were the most successful by cultural standard
Mm-hmm.
is that they were promoted early. Something happened in their life. Somebody was an alcoholic, somebody wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive sports training. Something happened that they had to assume adulting roles or roles that would normally be defined at adult roles early.
Mm-hmm.
And they received praise for doing adult roles. They received praise for not playing, but taking care of people and taking
Mm-hmm.
care of things. So it became embedded into their programming. I get rewarded when I'm caring for others. I get rewarded when I'm doing something that someone asked me to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I do well in school, people leave me alone. When I do well in school, people say I'm great. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I see that. And I think a lot of people who go on to be presidents, CEOs, vice presidents, entrepreneurs, they have that commonality from childhood. Um, it has been lovely for me to be able to realize, oh my gosh, I'm 50 something years old and I'm still trying to please my parents who have been dead for 20 some years. Um, it's wild. It's just wild. And
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't mean that all these tools that I've acquired are bad or wrong. No, I needed to acquire those to be on the journey that I'm on. And I can
Mm-hmm.
use these tools so effectively. The difference is I can use them from a mindset of I'm okay and will always be okay. And I don't need anything from anybody to feel that way. And then with that, I just get to be a creative being. And how do I want to
Mm-hmm.
play in this world? And what do I want to do with my time? And again, that brings us back to conscious leadership. Where do I want to work? Who do I want to work with? How do I want to show up at work? How do I want to show up for my vendors? How do I want to show up for my employees? How do I want to show up um, for my leadership? All of it. But that is the work. There is no other thing. There's just life. And sometimes we work and sometimes we play, but it's the same. It's just life. So, how am I going to live this life and live every moment of it, even if sometimes I'm in an office and sometimes I'm in the kitchen? And sometimes I'm not in the kitchen in your case, Susan.
Yes, that's right, folks. That is one room you will not find me in too often. I remember you said that on our first riff, Matt. You're like, sometimes just life. It's all life. Sometimes you're generating resources and sometimes you're depleting them, right? And I feel like that's what's so game changer about this concept of stepping to the helm consciously in your
Mm,
self leadership, right? Is like, because that's where the creative capacity opens up. As I talked about this on the show last time, I think, with Tracey, is like as a little girl growing up with an entrepreneurial father, watching him get launched from a cannon 7 days a
mm,
week to strive, survive for himself, for us, right? And provide that I can see how prohibitive, like not being consciously at the helm, being stuck in his autopilot, rinse and repeat patterns and programming that were informed from his trauma in his childhood. And so that's, I think, why we're looking at conscious leadership right now, right, Trace? And I know you want to get in on this. We've been talking so much about with these future generations coming into the workforce that we know because our children are all the
mm.
evidence we need will not be led by the high fear, low trust ways of the old school mindset. right? And also talking about AI and the level of disruption, which I think a lot of people are in a scarcity mindset about, like, oh, what we're going to be losing. And but we really need to adapt, like more than we probably ever have in our leadership at work, at home, in life. And so, right about now, I think, is when we want to start learning about how we open up our creative capacities through the portal of consciousness, right? Because adaptation it requires new choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a creative exercise that I believe every human being is supposed to come home to in this lifetime, as the reason for being a human being is that we actually are supposed to be creating. Trace, did
Mm-hmm.
you want to say something around that?
Yeah, I just I wanted to ask Matt because I think it's really important for our listeners to really understand what happens in those moments of those experiences that changes. And I know your TED Talk is fabulous and you explain it really well in that. But maybe just to give our listeners a little bit of, we talk about what it, we talk high level what could happen or how we can get really into self and really kind of understand ourselves, but without going into the whole scientific piece of it, right? Because that's a whole lesson in itself. But like, because I think people still have a bias or a prejudice sometimes about psychedelics, about what that does, but maybe just why is it so important? What really happens in the experience of, our mind, and what changes that we can actually come up and take a look, because, we know that, you come back and you can really see things differently and start kind of moving in your life in different ways and making different decisions, which we're talking about conscious leadership, which is so important. But can you explain to our listeners, like, what magic happens there that really changes us when we walk out of there? What really happens that then allows us to be connected to one and really kind of feel that love and that power that comes out of those experiences?
Mm.
It's such a beautiful question, Tracy.
Mhm.
First, I'll start with a disclaimer. Um, Psychedelics aren't for everybody. There are people with certain medical conditions and taking various prescriptions or supplements where they can be dangerous. So if this is something you're considering, talk to a healthcare professional. Go to spiritpharmacist.com and you can do a medical intake with someone like Dr. Ben Malcolm, who has nothing to sell you besides information. Um, so just go in. There are risks with any type of medicine. Nothing is safe. Even acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, kills 400 some people a year in America. So everything has risks, and just being aware of that and what might be risky for you is important as you make these decisions. Now, what happens for many people when they take a psychedelic? Well, parts of our brains, we talked about our neuroplasticity. We talked about paring down and getting into repetitive thinking patterns. And those patterns can manifest for us as I feel depression, I feel anxiety, I'm experiencing OCD, I'm overeating, I'm undereating, I'm gambling, I'm using alcohol too much. All of those are patterns, and those are ways that our physical is responding to our thinking patterns. Um, the first thing that's going to happen with a psychedelic is parts of your brain that haven't spoken to each other in a long time are going to start talking to each other again. And that's what I was talking about before with the insights, the awakenings, the awarenesses, the remembrance of
Mhm.
I don't have to think about it this way. So that's how that happens. Our brains literally, our neurons start firing and connecting in all sorts of different directions. For many people, shame, blame, and guilt gets reduced. So when we reduce those very human emotions, we can look at things that have happened in our past without bad me and say, okay, I can see that this felt so hard and it really has worked for me because of this. And here's the lesson that I didn't see, or I can have empathy for this situation or that situation that I couldn't have before, or I can have empathy for myself and I can have forgiveness for myself and I can move past whatever that was that has been a big T or little t trauma in my life. Um, yeah, when the inner narrator quiets down and shame, blame, and guilt are quieted as well, um, we really have a unique opportunity to look backwards And then to look forwards, wow, in my experience, reconnecting with some type of spirit source, whatever it is for the person coming in. And the communities that I work with are all multi-faith, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, agnostics, everything. Um, but it's pretty hard, in my experience, to use a psychedelic and not remember that we are all deeply interconnected. It's pretty hard to use a psychedelic and not remember that I'm not separate and apart from nature. I am nature. Okay. And it's pretty hard to forget I'm not alone. I'm deeply connected into this world that is, again, supporting me. And then with that grounding, I can then say, okay, I love this. I love me again. Now, what do I want to do with that information? And how do I want to move back through the world? And what is, again, how does that change how I sit at the kitchen table? How does it change how I use my phone? How does it change how I interact with my friends and the time I spend in community and allow myself that time? Because so the other thing that happens with so many of us who are successful by, again, our cultural standards is we're workaholics. And we are funny in this country. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're experiencing depression or anxiety and you're staying at home in bed and you can't get out and you're under a blanket, oh, poor them. But nobody says to the person who's on the cover of Fortune, oh, this person has no life. They just
Oof.
work and work and work. Poor them.
Oh
We
my gosh.
reward that
So true.
behavior
Hmm.
and we reward people who sacrifice their own lives in pursuit of materialism. And again, it's not that pursuit of materialism is wrong. There are things we all like are things. It's everything's in balance. But when we're out of balance, whether it's I can't get out of bed or if I can't leave the office, that's out of balance in either direction.
So freaking true and so freaking good. I feel like where I want to build off of that is like we understand now just some of what can go down in the experience of working with these medicines. You talk about in your TED talk how it's not a cure.
Mm,
However, it's a catalyst. And I know that that's something that you and I really align on because I think
hmm
the biggest differentiator that we have here at Team Elite in terms of the mindset piece of the equation in regards to how we, our form of intervention in leadership development and training is that it has to go to that experiential level, that step of depth in terms of actually exercising new choice for the purposes of integrating
mm,
everything that has been catalyzed, right? In a session and this is like my biggest pet
mm.
peeve in 2025 is although we have all the data, all the stats, all the research, we've shared it all over the last 5 years on this podcast, right? But yeah, in 2025, 75% of leadership development is still rated completely ineffective, meaning it does not affect change long term. Only 25% of it is doing that. And I feel like it's because it's only 25% of the market that understands the importance of integration. So when you talk about that in your TED Talk, that's essentially what you're talking about too, right? And I think what's so fascinating to me is just some of the neuroscientific benefits in regards to what happens post psychedelic experience. Can you share with us some of just what you mean when you say it's not a cure? Don't come in looking for the cure. It's a catalyst.
Yeah, we all grew up in our society, in this North American culture that we grow up in, our high priests are doctors. So we all grow up where our high priests are telling us, oh, you're experiencing depression, you're experiencing anxiety, take this pill, numb that pain. We all, whether it's for us or someone in our family, we all know people who are taking antidepressants. When they work, amazing. And when they don't work, either they don't work because they're not reducing the symptoms, or they're not working because they're coming with this incredible price tag of sexual dysfunction, weight gain, lethargy, suicidal ideation. But we were taught that we were fundamentally broken. There was something wrong with us, and if we took a pill, we could fix us. That's not my belief system. My belief is that none of us are broken, but we have forgotten how to move through the world. And for those of us where antidepressants aren't working for one reason or the other, or those of us who want to expand how we feel about our lives, these are tools that can put us into a state where we can remember who we are. We can hear our own voice come through. We do not have to give agency to doctors, gurus, shaman, healers. No, we can give agency to ourselves. And that knowing that I am strong and I am not broken and I am powerful and I am loving and I am loved, knowing that in our bones and in our cells and in our bodies, um, again, changes how we move through the world, because I'm no longer looking to you saying, can you love me? Please love me. And or I if and looking backwards, if I don't get this, I'm going to lose my toys, I'm going to lose my wife, I'm going to lose my kids, I'm going to lose my parents' affection, I'm going to lose whatever. I know that I'm enough, I'm worthy, I'm loved. And back to, how do I want to move through the world? But it starts with that knowing. And that's it. That's where I think each individual power comes from. And that's where the freedom to be creative, the freedom um, to think about people and process, and then the outcomes follow that. But it starts with not, again, what you do, it's how you do it. Did I answer your question?
Beautifully.
Okay.
I'm just trying not to hog the mic, and I want to give Tracey an opportunity to chime in here.
No, you keep going. You're on. I'm just loving where we're going right now. 'Cause I have some questions that are going to come up that I feel like we just need to a little bit, just one more piece that, I think, and I've read this in your book, and you've also talked about TED Talk, but the neuroplasticity and the value of that I don't think a lot of us that are, obviously neuroscientists know or talk about or, read about so much. But maybe can you explain a little bit about that in terms of like your perspective of that and the importance of it? And really that is a big piece of the way that you can change the way you see things and the way that you move through life, I think, is that piece, and how long it lasts and what it really, the value it brings us, right?
Yeah, thank you for focusing me on that. What Tracey is referring to is this period of time after we take a psychedelic where our brain is extra neuroplastic. And think about it like when you're a kid and you're able to learn really quickly. Well, we have about roughly a 30-day window following a larger, a sizable psychedelic experience of extra neuroplasticity. So one of the things we encourage people to do in that window is to train your mind for the positive. So let's start a gratitude practice of some sort. We're just noticing a few things that we're grateful for every day. And that helps us move from there's not enough and I'm scared to, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I'm so lucky. How grateful am I? Um, and then also to think about what behaviors I might want to switch or change or adjust without blaming, with no bad me. I operated then with the exact level of awareness that I had, and now I'm operating now with a different level of awareness, and that's perfect. Um, and I want to change the way I do, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's a great time to start introducing small change into your life. With a big caveat, we also tell people that for the 2 weeks following a psychedelic experience, don't make any major decisions. No firings, no jobs, no houses, no puppies. Give it some time, but you have that 30-day window. And then I think the other thing I'll just touch on for a moment, because these aren't cures, because this isn't, we're not numbing the pain and making going away. We're going to the root. We're bringing it close. We're looking at it. We're digesting it. We're processing it. Many of us realize that it's nice to have mirrors around. It's nice to have people that we can share with. We can talk about our lives openly and deeply. They can remind us, you're not alone. You're loved. This is working for you. How is this helping your learning, healing, and growing? And sometimes that looks like a great coach. Sometimes it looks like a therapist. Sometimes it looks like a community group. Sometimes it looks like all of the above. But it's nice to have um, someone else just help remind us when we forget, because we will. And that is the practice of life. We forget and we start getting attached to things that we don't need to be attached to. We start telling ourselves stories that we don't need to tell ourselves. And we start getting upset and we start living in a non-optimized world. And then we remember and things start to shift again. And how do we close that gap some more and find ways to, again, move through with more satisfaction, more love, um, yeah, more consciousness.
I love it. I wonder if you ever get asked, I'm just curious, like, because I talk to a lot of business leaders, and obviously this is coming up more and more contextually in our conversations as this mission amplifies at this time in space and history. And I feel like a lot of the point of resistance for high achievers, especially if they like haven't done the therapy and the coaching and any of that deeper work, is like when you're talking about it in that context, in that way, they're like, why would I ever want to unlock those doors and have that stuff shoved in my face?
Mm.
Like I spent my entire life running away from these things. And you're trying to compel me to go in there. Why? And I obviously try to approach it from more of the like, creativity, empowerment, all of this in terms of resiliency and plasticity of the brain, because I think that's easier for entrepreneurs, especially to make a case for and grasp in terms of the benefits. But what do you say to those folks who have never really faced their trauma or their backstories before? Like, how do you make the case for them?
It's even the way you're phrasing that question, I find interesting. So
Let's explore it.
here's what's coming forward for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what's right for anybody else besides me. And the
Mm,
moment I start thinking, I know what you should do,
mm-hmm.
um, I start creating violence on you because I'm
Mm,
effectively trying to control your behavior.
mm,
So that's not my job. My job is to love you deeply.
mm-hmm.
And my job is to think about the moments that we are in consciousness together,
Mm-hmm.
that this whole exchange is about my learning, healing, and growing from my perspective, and about your learning, healing, and growing from your perspective. And all I can do is share what I've learned for me. And then whatever you do with it, you do with it. Now, if someone says, I'm not sure I want to explore my past, or I'm not sure I want to feel the sorrow of the world,
Mm,
okay, that's beautiful for you. You don't have to, of course. These are, and you don't have to do it through entheogens or psychedelics or entheogens. Um, but what are you afraid of? And how does it feel? And I'll give an example of okay. So I had a situation during puberty with a family member 10 years older, and and I was horrified by this experience, and but I just put it into a drawer, right? Which is what we do. Some of us do. I do. I did.
mm-hmm.
And when anyone would make jokes even adjacent to that topic, my ears would burn, my stomach would be in knots for decades. And then in an entheogenic experience, I was back in that situation and I could and they teach us, by the way, when we have an experience in front of us in a psychedelic that we don't like, but Bill Richards says is like, explore it with wild curiosity, crawl up the dragon's nose and look out its eyes. Okay, great. So that's what we're doing. That's what I did. And seeing that experience not from my perspective, but from hers was wild. And I don't have to condone the behavior to understand the humanity. Um, and I don't have to condone the behavior to understand it wasn't my fault. I wasn't the adult in the room, and I don't have to condone the behavior to understand how deeply lonely she was, how rejected she felt, how she was struggling with substance use. Um, and then in an instant, I could find empathy, and then in an instant, I wasn't carrying it, and that is freeing in a way that is something I would never have asked for because it was in the drawer. But sometimes the psychedelics show us things that we talk about. It doesn't might not give you the journey you want. It's a journey you need. I guess on
Mm-hmm.
that day, that's the journey I needed. So I guess I would say to anybody, what I've learned for me is there are things I didn't know I needed that this
Mm-hmm.
has helped me uncover and unpack.
Mm-hmm.
And through this process, through this relationship, by the way, with these, because they're not cures, I have a relationship. For me, it's primarily with mushrooms. I have a relationship with this device, and from time to time, I go back and I work with this naturally occurring fungi, which grows in every continent except Antarctica, and people have been using it in ceremonial use for tens, if not 40,000 years. I, from time to time, work with this substance as a way of connecting with source, feeling great gratitude for the interconnectedness of all things, and to show me what I need to see. And again, from that comes clarity. From clarity comes conscious leadership. And we're back into, why does conscious leadership matter? It doesn't matter for them, it matters for me. It
Mm-hmm.
always matters for the person, for all of us who have our perspective. It's the only thing that matters. And how do we remember that? Because we're so used to giving all the time. I'm doing this for them. I'm doing it for my alcoholic parent. I'm doing this for my sick kid. I'm doing this for whatever. No, we're always doing everything for us as peers with each other.
Mm. I know you got a lot of listeners right now who are like, really? It's all about us?
Mhm.
Right? Like, it's like
Yeah.
we always get pushed back on that. You want to talk about self leadership? I want to talk about how I lead my people and my families. And like, yeah, but ultimately, like, that's where leadership starts in our conscious perspective, right? Is like understanding the thing that impacts and influences all of that the most.
Ram Dass talks about when we work on ourselves is as service to others.
Mhm.
And when we work with others, that's really just a way of working on ourselves.
Mm. Wow, you're talking Ram Dass now. I feel like we're opening up a part three. Yeah, I just want to that's where I think we land the plane, to just talking to any of our listeners who are not currently identifying as spiritual people. I'm sure you get that type of question because you did mention like we got atheists in these rooms too, right? Like that is not a prerequisite to being able to work with this modality. What do
It's
you
not, but it's an and. And when I hear people say I'm not religious, when I dig a little deeper with most people, what they're typically saying is, I'm not anti-science. I'm not. Um, I'm anti-patriarchy. Um, I'm spiritual but not religious. Is okay, great. So we've made religion a bad word. It's been taken hostage by the extremists. Um, but the idea that we are spiritual, the understanding, the knowing that we're spiritual creatures having a human experience, um, changes how we live through the life. If we think that our lives is literally going to be um, from birth to the crematorium and that's it, we might lead life one way. And if we think that we have chosen our time to have the human experience, to learn whatever we need to learn, and that we get to go back to our spiritual creatures, and we get to go back into the interconnectedness of all things, might change how we move through the world. So yeah, it's not about what team you're on. Um it's about the
perspective?
core of all religion, which in my opinion is love. And it's someone's direct spiritual experience that got written down. And then dogma and men, primarily with positions and purposes, hijacked different aspects of it. And great harm was done for many, many people. And that doesn't mean that the teachings of Christ or Buddha or Muhammad aren't really beautiful, valuable teachings. So how do we separate, or how do we maybe look back at our faith traditions that are of origin with a new lens? And how do we do it from not sitting in a pew where I've been told what something that happened to somebody else, but sitting in the pew having had my own experience and now being able to think about, what does it mean to love my brothers and sisters? What does it mean that there is heaven on earth?
Yeah, I think it is like whether you're identifying with the labels, it's just a matter of perspective. And I think that really is why conscious leadership is so game changer, right? Is to be able to work with that perspective. That is the highest bird's eye view that one can possibly get as a human being. right? But yeah, I think it's game changer because it changes the meaning that we are ascribing to our 3D human everyday experience. Spirituality to me is just the energy of how we're all connected.
Beautiful. And that's, I mean, that is also this practice is again,
Mm-hmm.
if I have to have room for every being I encounter to have their own belief system of what's
Mm-hmm.
important to them.
Mm-hmm.
So how one person defines spirituality or religion to them is how they define it. And who am I to know? And that's the other piece of this is it's this idea of if everything is divine, then we need it all at some level. And we can go back to kind of how you started this too. Okay, there's all sorts of things happening in the world, and um, and I can feel energy in my body towards some of them. Okay, I want to make some change happen here, and that's the creative piece. I have the energy and the clarity, and I want to make some change happen. Um, but I don't want to lose sight of, oh my God, there were trillions upon trillions of accidents that allowed me to be alive at this moment in time. And wow, we have artificial intelligence alongside lab grown meat and alongside of vertical farming, alongside of autonomous cars, alongside of a reduction in the cost of knowledge, alongside of a reduction in war and violence against people, alongside of food abundance in a way that we've never seen before, alongside of climate change and people migration and political systems that are changing. Okay. Oh my God, I get to be alive now.
Mm.
And it's going to look different as it always has. And I get to be alive now. So, how can I hold both things as true?
Woo! Mic drop.
I was just going to do the same
Unless,
thing.
no, I was going to say, unless Tracey has something to say before
No,
we drop this
I was
mic.
going to do the mic drop because that was perfect.
Mm,
Yeah, I definitely want to have another conversation to keep going on where we landed with that because I feel like, yeah, I think that is why we're so fervently on this mission to really bring as much awareness to this concept of consciousness in the context of leadership at this moment of time where we too agree. It's like such a privilege and an honor to even have a voice in this space, to even have the privilege of bringing these types of portals of possibility to our leaders. I believe that this is going to be our greatest legacy someday is to take this world from striving, actually surviving, to thriving. And everything that you just landed on that we're going to drop the mic on today
mm,
exemplifies that for me. That's the pathway, that's the strategy. And I don't think any generation before us could ever say that that was a possibility in their lifetimes.
no, and it's amazing that we get to do this now, and we are
Mm-hmm.
feeling it. Anyone who's listening to this point of this podcast, you've been on here for I don't know, half an hour, 45
Mm-hmm.
minutes at this point. You know that consciousness is changing. You can feel it. You can feel it around you, and you can feel it in you, or you wouldn't be here. So now we're not talking about is consciousness changing or is it not? We're purely talking about how am I going to play with this role of consciousness in my life? Am I going to use this tool they're talking about? Am I not going to use this tool I'm talking about? But I know it's happening. I know I'm hungry for it. I know my community's hungry for it. And I know at some level that the polarization that I'm seeing all around me, it's going to be a tulip madness moment, and those sides are going to come back together as we always have, and we're going to move forward with a new understanding in this new world, whatever that looks like, whatever we help create. And that is our opportunity as leaders in this world. And that is why we've gotten the education. That is why we did those really hard lessons, so that we can be the change in ourselves and in the world that we want to see. And if we can remember that we're always doing it for us first, and by doing it for us, we're rippling it out.
Mm. All right. That's the mic drop. Oh my goodness, my cup runneth over as I knew
Mm.
it would, which is why I was so excited for this pod and this riff today. You can see why this man is our mentor in this space of consciousness. Yeah, I just want everybody to please go and follow up after this podcast. Get into your research like I know you will. Based on this conversation today, Matt has a whole host of incredible books in and around Beginner's Guide to Psychedelics. He's got a book called Psychedelics for Everyone, but no, he doesn't believe they're for everyone. He just thinks everyone should be able to access this portal of possibility if they feel that call. His TED Talk is definitely the place to start. That'll definitely integrate a lot of the aspects of what we talked about today, add a little bit more depth. Yeah, they're not a cure, they're a catalyst. And that is the call that we are all feeling through our earwaves right now. It is the call to consciousness. So whatever modality that is, we're just so grateful that you're here learning about the possibilities in that portal known as conscious leadership. Tracey, any final notes or thoughts from you today?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Matt for doing the work he does. I think it's just so remarkable and so courageous and brave. And I know you help a lot of people. We see it, and we just want to recognize you and say thank you.
I received that, Tracy, and it's just this beautiful co-creation that we are all a part of. And but thank you. I appreciate the comments.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks, and that's the last place we'll land this plane is in our attitude of gratitude for all of you. You are our inspiration. You know that is why we are answering this call to stick the landing on this conscious leadership theme here in, the fall, the next chapter of the LLP. Like I said today, and I'm going to keep saying it on this mic so that we can change the collective consciousness in and around the leadership development space. I really believe that conscious leadership is how we're going to change the way this game is being played. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any more curiosity in and around how we're changing that game, with our leadership coaching, some of the NLP coaching I kind of talked about today, our leadership locker rooms. You can go on over to the website, elitehighperformance.com. Please hit like and subscribe on your way out the locker room door. And definitely share this episode as far and wide as you possibly can to help us really spread this ripple effect. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.